a session on 5 big bets for the future of CX. For this session, we would love to have here with us the Marketing Head, India and SAARC Zendesk, Mr. Rahul Menon, to please join us up here on the stage. Please help me welcome. Mr. Menon has led strategic marketing initiatives in companies such as Directi, L&T, Infotech, and Flock. He has been recognized as being among the 100 best marketing minds of India at the CMO Leadership Awards by Enterprise IT World. And we warmly welcome Mr. Menon. Please join us.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to see all of you here, and it's a pleasant morning. And thanks for taking the time out early in the day to come over for this particular session. We've already had a bunch of interesting discussions. I know Nitin kind of spoke of from Zendesk before. He outlined on some of the interesting areas about what's happening in terms of current trends. And there was this interesting presentation from Anmol in terms of what's really happening, the industry leader perspective. I'm kind of going to build on some of those and going to give a perspective on what's coming up in the future, or rather what we perceive is going to kind of come up. It's not going to be 5 big bets because we realize we might run short of time. We might run short of time, so I'm just going to be speaking on 4 big bets, which we believe are the most crucial ones. With that, let's dive straight into the content. There's this classic quote around technology, which I absolutely love. So it speaks about the fact that we tend to overestimate the effect of a technology in the short run, while underestimating its effect in the long run. Now, we're going to keep this quote at the back of our mind, and we're going to look at this across 4 key product areas. So there's conversational CRM, there's AI, there's customer journey, and customer intelligence. And for each of these areas, we are going to view it through 2 lenses. One is a short-term lens of 2025, where we are going to see much of what is already happening today. And then there's a long-term lens of 2030, where we are going to see how things are going to be dramatically different than what we expect it to be. So that change, as I said, is going to be something which you're kind of underestimating at this point of time, but that's where we are kind of seeing this. I want to dive into the first big bet, and this is on conversational CRM. But before we do that, I want to give a perspective on what we mean by conversational CRM and conversational CX, and this very short video which will give some perspective on that.
So, customer support is a conversation, so it should feel like one. Messaging meets customers wherever they are, wherever they go, on whatever they use. Messaging stays with them over time, so they never have to repeat themselves. It's more personal. Messaging lets agents focus on the complex stuff by letting the bots handle the easy stuff. Richer customer conversations, stronger human relationships. Zendesk messaging.
Great. So with that, moving on to our first big bet, which is on conversational CRM. So the bet is that in the short term, by 2025, the conversational CRM will be dominant and proactive. By 2030, we see that every business will live and provide conversational support everywhere that you are. I'll just elaborate on some of the details a bit more. See, messaging has completely changed the way that we communicate with each other. We all remember calling a friend at one point of time. Nowadays, we don't do that. We just call them. Nowadays, we just text them, preferably via WhatsApp. Now, this ease and preference for messaging is not restricted just to our personal conversations. We also are seeing that extend in the way that we interact with businesses. When we reach out to businesses, we expect that same level of comfort. And when we're talking about conversational business, what we're seeing is customers prefer to interact with the business and get pretty much everything done within. It's not entirely there yet, but that's where we are seeing things kind of moving. An example could be in terms of like what you see on the screen, which is 4 Seasons. 4 Seasons has this digital concierge where you can reach out to them for pretty much everything in your preferred messaging language, and you're guaranteed the kind of messaging, rich messaging experience that you want. Or maybe it's a case where you want to reach out to a business related to the status of your order, and within the messaging interface, you're able to get the status of the interface or status of the order. You don't necessarily need to jump out of the messaging interface. Or maybe even scenarios where, say, you reach out to an airline through a messaging app, and you're able to see that option of selecting a flight seat within the messaging interface again. So this is where we see things kind of moving forward. Now this use of messaging has increased dramatically over the last few years, and it's obvious that in some time it's going to absolutely dominate it. Now every year for the last few years, we have been coming up with these Zendesk CX Trends 2022 reports, and I'm going to kind of reference this report a couple of times during the course of our conversation. But basis this report, we have seen that social messaging inquiries have really shot up. So it's been the largest increasing channel, or the largest growing channel by far, to the point where we see that there's been almost like a 40% increase year on year in terms of tickets which have kind of come through from social messaging. So this is definitely a good sign, and it's not a surprise, because when you think of, say, some of us might have heard of 𝗕𝗵𝗴 𝗕𝗲𝗁 classic idea of long-term thinking in terms of seeing, hey, what is not going to change in the next X years? Now, when we put that onto a CX context, what's absolutely not going to change is the fact that customers are always going to want fast, personalized, convenient experiences. So that is never going to change. And at this point of time, the best technology that we have to kind of deliver on this is messaging. There's no other technology which comes in remotely close. Now, in addition to it being convenient and all the benefits that I said, there's also the advantage that messaging can help you deliver richer, more sophisticated, and much more proactive experiences for your customers. So obviously that means there's a superlative experience that you can extend to your customers. Now, better still, there's the perception that messaging might only come in handy during support. That's not the case. It can be useful across every stage of your customer lifecycle, whether it be consideration, acquisition, support, loyalty, and there are tangible business benefits that you can drive across each of these stages. So from a customer perspective, as I said, they can browse, they can book, they can complete surveys, everything without ever leaving that particular interface that they used to. Now, I want to move to that long-term view which I just spoke about. A long-term bet is that by 2030, everywhere that you go, you'll be able to converse with a business as easily as you can text a friend today. And I want to bring in this futuristic perspective of maybe an Airbus A380. Now, for every single day that the Airbus A380 isn't running or isn't flying, it costs the airline about $1.25 million. Now, what this means is, obviously, there's going to be a huge team of engineers and support staff and technicians, all geared towards ensuring that the uptime is as high as possible. Now, by 2030, we see that even this area is going to be impacted in a good way, in terms of a positive evolution of support. And the way we see this is with conversational support kind of coming into the picture. It just takes one command for the engineers and technicians to reach out and get access to training manuals or help guides or even live support for that matter. Now, when you think of how things are evolving with augmented reality and metaverse and everything, you can imagine the kind of immersive and contextual experiences that are possible. So that's where we see conversational CX kind of evolving in the years to come. I want to move to our second big bet, which is on artificial intelligence. Our short-term view is that by 2025, all CX will be AI first. And by 2030, AI will replace the majority, about 75% of frontline customer interactions. Again, I have this very short video, which...
In customer support, there are multiple possible realities. Some where bots aren't exactly helping.
No. What?
And others
Oh, you're welcome. Glad we got that fixed.
where people and bots
For that one, I'll just pass it off to my human friend, okay?
are synchronized.
Hello?
What's your reality? Take the CX Accelerator quiz to find out.
Yeah, I've got your account right here.
So, sorry, that quiz is the same one that you would have seen in Nitin's presentation. You need not try it again. But if I had to summarize that entire video in one sentence, it would be that customers really need AI to make their lives easier, not harder. And at this point of time, there are some very common customer frustrations, which are, in fact, all too relatable, because most of us have gone through that. So we have seen that customers are annoyed with the fact that they don't have a choice in picking a human over a bot at the start of an interaction, or that it requires way too many questions for the bot to give you some kind of a resolution, or that maybe even after you answer all of those questions, you are not guaranteed an accurate answer. Or perhaps worst of all, the scenarios where you spend a lot of time answering all of those bot's questions, and eventually the bot gives up and hands it over to a human agent who then proceeds to ask you the exact same questions that you had answered 5 minutes back. So all of these are classical customer frustrations with AI that we are kind of seeing, and this is basis the CX Trends data, which I kind of referenced some time back. Now, AI is still clearly not perfect, as we just discussed, but there's been tremendous progress over the years. A classical example which we have here is of self-driving cars. So we've seen self-driving car technology to be far, far ahead than what we would have perceived it to be. Like 10 years back, I'm sure none of us would have even imagined that self-driving cars would be at the stage where they are at this point of time. In fact, many of us would have never even imagined that we would have had self-driving cars possibly. Of course, there have been the minor hiccups, like some of us might have heard of the Tesla, which accidentally flew 20 meters over a river, stuff like that. But by and large, when we see things have kind of worked well, and this thanks to AI, thanks to applications of AI. And this is not just focused on one specific area, because we see applications in other industries also. When you think of healthcare, we see that fracture detection rates have improved by over 10% thanks to FDA-approved AI. Now, I want to just put a CX lens to this. So when we think of it from a CX perspective, AI has worked particularly well in 3 areas. These are automation, recommendation, and prediction. Now, when I speak of automation, I'm referring to, sorry, just give me a second. Yeah, we are referring to AI helping with repetitive tasks. In the case of the Zendesk tool, we see this kind of playing out with answer bots, where you're able to get answers to the most commonly asked questions without needing any human intervention. The second is what we would consider recommendation. And with recommendation, it's all about AI helping in making humans smarter. And an example here in terms of what we call suggested macros, which helps agents with some of the commonly asked questions or some of the scenarios which AI is able to identify. And let me give you an example. Say, assume you're running an e-commerce company, and you have one of your customers reaching out to you for a return. Now, the AI engine, bases all of those tickets that it has seen, it will be able to identify that this is a classical case for what's a return requested macro, and it will be able to make that recommendation to the agent. So it just helps with making human agents much more smarter. The third area is in terms of what we call prediction, or which is in terms of spotting patterns. And here as well, it's about, let me give you an example in terms of what we call content cues. Here we think of, say, all of the tickets that have kind of come through. There might be repetitive tickets which are probably around similar themes. People just end up asking the same questions, and you don't have a self-service article, so a bot is not able to pick that up. So what content cues or a similar feature would do is it would identify those set of articles and give you a recommendation. Hey, you probably need to update the title of an article, or add new search labels, or maybe even create an entirely new article altogether. So this is just examples of how we see AI working currently. Now, I'm just going to expand that view. So you'll see the relatable ones, which are the center, which is automation, recommendation, and prediction. These are the areas where we see AI working well, which are its current strength. Now, going forward, what we see is AI strength is going to evolve much beyond that. So it's going to extend to also include proactive as well as preventative use cases. So when we think of proactive use cases, it's about how do we proactively engage with the customer so that we are able to provide a better customer experience. This could mean how do we get the right kind of notifications out to the customer. This could refer to areas around connection. How do we forge a stronger connection with the customers purely by using chatbots and AI? Or similarly, in the preventative area, we think of trend identification. So trend identification is in a case of thinking what could possibly and taking active steps to kind of mitigate that kind of a scenario. Now, all of this is, I mean, the key idea is when you look at all of this, it's that AI is going to be the first point of contact in most customer interactions going forward. Now, we are already seeing to some extent the kind of impact that AI has in terms of frontline customer interactions. Some of us might be familiar with the driverless deliveries that Walmart kind of pioneered, or there's the robotic butlers, which kind of have been seen at a lot of hotels. Or if any of you have, if some of you might have been to Bangalore airport recently and seen some of those passenger experience bots, which help you with some of the basic stuff. So we're kind of already seeing some of these happening at this point of time. Now that leads us to a very common concern that we kind of hear from many CX leaders, which is what will happen to human jobs at this point of time? Aren't these bots kind of replacing human jobs? And this is a good thing in that we have historical trends and patterns which show that it's not quite that way. Because when we think of when ATMs came into the picture, or when computers were introduced into the workplace, there were similar fears. But it didn't quite materialize in that way. On the contrary, we have seen newer jobs kind of coming into the picture. We have seen newer jobs which never even existed at that point of time. And our bet is, with AI, it's going to be something similar. Humans are going to be more involved in better quality work, more productive work. It's just not going to be the same type of work that was there pre-AI. With that, I want to move to our third big bet. This is around customer journey. Here, the idea is by 2025, the short-term view, customers will drive all service. It will be totally on their terms. And by 2030, hyper-specialized support will be available for everything, but of course, it's going to be for a price. And I just want to take a step back and look at the historical view, which is service in the past used to mean that business and the agent had all of the control. At that point of time, businesses didn't really care who you were or what your concerns were. Their primary objective was just to get off the customer call and move on to the next interaction. It's not a bad or a wrong thing, it's just how things used to be, because that was how businesses used to be measured at that point of time. With agents also, the scenario wasn't quite that much better, because we know that agents would just kind of not have any customer interaction history. They would follow a standard routine script. Hey, good morning, afternoon, this is Rahul at ABC company, thanks for calling, how may I assist you? There's nothing innovative about it. Now, what it meant is the burden of solving an issue almost always fell onto the customer, because the customer was the one who had to kind of drive those interactions and do all the follow-up to ensure that things are kind of going right. Now, fast forward to today, this power dynamic has completely shifted. The power dynamic between businesses and customers has completely shifted. We now see that with a lot of those changes that have kind of come in, so there's been accelerated competition. The switching costs have reduced for a product. Social media has come to the picture, which means one single customer's pain points are now aired out to the whole world to see. So all of these in combination have meant that customer service has become slightly more important. And what this has led to is a point where many businesses, including leading Indian brands like, say, Digit Insurance or Myntra, or maybe even brands like Lenovo, they're starting to look at CX as a key differentiator, even promoting it that way when it comes to their marketing campaigns and stuff like that. And what this has done is, for the first time ever, customers have now started to gain control, which was never the case before. This leads to a scenario where, say, we see this shift from V1 to V2. So V1 is how customers used to have to interact at one point of time with phone decision trees. So people would go through an IVRS, which asks them to enter which department they want, press 1 for sales, press 2 for marketing, whatever. And they have to go through it branch by branch until eventually they get to the right leaf where there's a possible resolution. At this point, it's not that way. I mean, it's kind of like V2, where we are just jumping straight to the right leaf, and customers are expecting that they just enter their kind of query or concern and they get an immediate resolution. They are no longer comfortable or content with being transferred from one branch to the other. So this is where kind of things are. And this shift where customers are in control is only going to accelerate from here on. Soon we expect that customers are going to drive all service interactions, because if businesses don't let them, they're just going to leave the company. So that's where things are at this point. So again, from the CX Trends data, we see that 61% of companies or customers will leave a company if they have had one bad experience. That's about 22% higher than what it used to be a year back. You increase that number to about 76% or rather you increase that over 2 bad experiences, about 76% of your customers are out the door. Now, with that level of customer attrition, no business can really afford to take customer experience lightly, which is why the power is going to continue being in favor of the customers. Now, another thing which is going to happen is as customers dictate the support that they want, they're going to have more and more specialized requests and queries. And it's going to end up in a scenario where businesses have to focus a lot more on handling some of those personalized queries and stuff like that. But of course, there might be some certain outrageous, even slightly funny requests like the ones that you see over here. So these are actual excerpts from requests that restaurant service staff have kind of received in terms of what people are asking them to do. So while it's not going to be this bad, hopefully, but we're going to see a lot more of those queries kind of coming over, and businesses might not necessarily be able to service all of that. The idea here is for some of the more hyper-specialized requests, there's going to be more specialized communities and forums which will be kind of looking at resolving that. It's not something which can be solved by a company alone. Now, hyper-specialized support, of course, will be available for everything for a price. It's already there. Some of the funnier examples we can find if we take the time out to go to Fiverr or Upwork or places like that. But it's going to be a realistic scenario. We are going to see this happen, and it's going to be there for a price, and it's going to be a reality once we are at 2030 or around that particular time frame. Moving on to our fourth and final big bet for today. This is around customer intelligence. Now, 2025, the short-term view, it will not be about having all of the data. Instead, it's going to be having the right data and doing the right things with the right data. And by 2030, the long-term view is the notion of a system of record will change entirely. Now, historically, we see that businesses used to struggle with not having access to data. This has not been so much a surprise to many of us in the industry. I know Anmol also kind of briefly referred to what was kind of happening in terms of the challenges of data. And what this meant is when we look at the sources being collected, when we look at the things should have been tracked, so lots of things should have been tracked. They were either weren't tracked or were poorly tracked. And that kind of led to there being either incomplete or inaccurate data. And even in scenarios, even once the data sources were identified, there was a problem in terms of bringing together disparate sources and systems and making sense of all of that. Fast forward to today, we see the situation is slightly better because access to data is no longer as big a problem as what it used to be at one point of time. Most organizations have come around to fixing that, but we are in a different situation where we have an outrageously large amount of data that we are dealing with. And in a sense, it's like we are data rich, but insights poor. So the key is to figure out how we can cut through that clutter of noise. So it's not about the notion or the myth of getting a customer 360 where you just collect all of the data possible. That's not a realistic task. You can never have all of the data. But it's about having the right kind of data and making the right kind of insights, getting the right kind of insights from that data. Now, getting the right insight from the right data and at the right time is what will help you deliver each customer a truly incredible and personalized experience. And it's kind of like a scenario where you're thinking of a customer in terms of like getting a great understanding of the customer. To do that, you will need to have the right signal, the right insight, and also great understanding. It's kind of like thinking of it as a target segment of one versus a target segment of many, that kind of an approach. And for companies who have mastered that approach, there's some solid business benefits out there. So companies who excel at personalization, they are seeing at about 40% higher revenue than their peers in the same marketplace. I want to speak about the concept of right data, and this is going to evolve over time. So there's no single thing which, I mean, it's your understanding of right data will evolve over time. But I want to bring in this example of Sachin Tendulkar and Rohit Shetty, who have remarkably similar demographics. They are both male, born in 1973, living in Mumbai, stuff like that. Now, if you're to treat them as identical purely based on the demographic data, you'll be far off the mark, because both of them clearly have very different personalities, have very different customer needs, hopefully. And what I want to bring about is the point that we might have an obsession with demographics, which is not necessarily the right way to go about it. And eventually, we are looking at a scenario where the data is going to be much more temporary. So we might not have access to customer data as much as we do today. In a sense, today, we are going through a golden age of data collection where we just have all of the data that we need. Or maybe if you think of it from a privacy standpoint, maybe we are going through the dark ages. So this particular access which we have is not necessarily going to continue in the future. And the way we kind of see this is, in the future, you will just have access to your customer data for a very limited amount of time. So it's going to be like you want to make a delivery to a customer. The customer opts in to give you access to their delivery address for the period of time that you need to complete the delivery. After that is done, they will kind of revoke that access automatically. Now, with that kind of a scenario, there's going to be a lot more focus in terms of intent and history and the other data which you absolutely own, rather than on demographic data, which is the customer's own data. So now, when you layer in Web3 and the anonymity and privacy that it brings in, it's obviously going to be very interesting a very interesting situation in the times to come. So, and this will ultimately challenge the notion of a system of record that we have at this point of time. Big bets for the future of CX. I know we are kind of out of time, so I will very quickly wrap this up. So these were the 4 big bets which we spoke of, which is conversational service, AI, customer journey, and customer intelligence. And some of the long-term bets, as I said, we hope that some of these might actually come into play a bit earlier even than 2030. Now, with that, I want to give you a quick overview to Zendesk. I know Nitin kind of covered some of those earlier, but I want to just reiterate some of those points. So, see, at Zendesk, we power some of the world's most innovative customer experiences. We work with brands like Netflix, etc., Siemens, Ola, Uber, Tesco, Siemens, Samsung, a bunch of those companies, about 170,000 other companies across the globe, and we help them deliver great experiences to their customers. And we've also been ranked by Gartner as a Magic Quadrant leader for the last 6 years in a row. In addition to being ranked #1 for the digital customer service use case in Gartner's Critical Capabilities report. I'm just going to go back to big bet #1, which is on conversational CRM. So one of the key things is it's crucial for many companies to create customized messaging experiences that are very specific to their organization. So at Zendesk, that's been one of the areas that we have kind of seen a lot of success in. So we work with a bunch of companies, including Four Seasons, Vimeo, Expedia, a bunch of those companies in terms of helping them deliver those customized, personalized messaging experiences. If that is something of interest to you, we'd love to kind of have a discussion. It's something which will work with your existing system. So it's not a case of having to uproot what you already have. So it's something which will work with whatever you are currently using. But we'd love to have a conversation if that's of interest. Next steps, do connect with us at the Zendesk booth. We are right outside. And if some of the stats that we discussed are of interest, at least we have the AI and conversational CX stats on this QR code. With that, thank you so much. I'll just maybe keep this QR code for a second more.
Zendesk makes customer service software.
Thank you.
And it works right out of the box. It is also completely customizable and scalable and connects to the rest of your business. But no matter how you use it, Zendesk is designed to help you give your teams what they need so that your customers get what they want. Let's say your customers mostly send you emails, but some conversations are better over the phone, and maybe you'd like to start using a messaging app as well. In Zendesk, it's easy to add any new channels you need. And for the agent, this is all one conversation in one place. Collaborators are just a few clicks away. Same for knowledge articles, apps, even tools and information from other systems you already use. All valuable context about who you're trying to help and how to solve their issue. But perhaps your business is growing and your support operation is getting more complex. Zendesk lets you customize and optimize the whole picture, like by routing tickets to the right agents based on expertise, or automating which tools an agent sees based on the type of question. As your teams become more organized and productive, your customers get faster, more effective service. And with our built-in analytics that track just about everything, you'll also understand how to tie it all together. Like when you identify a question that's trending, so you assign an expert to create a new self-service article, which you feed to our AI-powered bots without writing any code, so that when the next customer reaches out, they get the answer they're looking for immediately. And hopefully, they feel very good about your company. Well done. Start your free trial today.
Well, we all heard wonderful insights from country's best marketing mind, Mr. Rahul Menon. Can we give him a huge round of applause?